Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to USDA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen, and I'm the Executive Director here at USDA Florida. And I couldn't be more excited for our episode today. It's a topic I've wanted to do for a really long time, and I'm so grateful to have a very special guest joining us today, Greg Gettinger. And he is actually the founder of Tennis eSports. And we're actually going to talk about Tennis eSports today. And so, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. And I know you're joining us from Austria, so thank you very much. This is now an international podcast, so I think you're our first international guest. Very grateful for that. Could you tell me maybe a little bit about your background and your connection to tennis? Did you grow up playing the game, or did you get involved later in life? How did you come to be a tennis fan and player?
Well, I must say I always loved tennis. I played tennis when I was, young. Unfortunately, my parents did not have enough money to pay me tennis lessons and pay the courts, because it's quite expensive here in Austria, and especially in the wintertime, to book courts. We have no public courts. So when I was young, I went to basketball. I have been in the national team and quite competitive. And so when I got older, I got back to tennis, and I just love it. It's a great sport.
Well, I'm glad you came back to us. We have lots of public tennis courts here in Florida, so you're welcome to come play anytime you choose. We'd love to have you. Can you tell me a little bit about your company, Tennis eSports, and how you got the idea maybe to create this virtual environment to play and learn tennis?
Yeah, well, it actually happened on the idea came on the tennis court, because my son at that time, he was 12. He was watching me and playing on his iPad a tennis game with two fingers, and then he said, I make a serve of 150 miles per hour, and I said, okay, I'm gonna get you. This is not gonna work out like that. But the sad story actually was that my son got very much addicted to these shooting games in esports, and that was not really funny, because he stopped playing tennis, and he was quite good in tennis, but he stopped playing tennis. So I had to find something where I can catch him where he was. So the idea came up is, why don't I make an application which is really authentic, not just with two fingers, but it would come so close to tennis that you really learn tennis. And the nice story is, there's a fantastic ending, because just last week he became the Viennese champion in tennis, because he got back to tennis, because he trained every day with the application, his backhand spin, and he got so well that he's playing tournaments, and he just last week, as I said, he got the champion, became champion.
Oh, congratulations. So nice, yes, that's a great story. That reminds me a little bit of, what's happening in the sports world overall. Some people would say golf had really been a leader in this space. I think companies like Top Golf in particular, I remember 20 years ago going to Top Golf in Virginia, and now Drive Shack, they've really adopted that virtual gamification type of environment. And then NASCAR, I know, probably over the last 10 years, really made a significant investment in that esports space as a way to learn to drive, and digitally mapped all of the tracks to make that more of a real experience. What do you think tennis can learn from what other sports have been doing in this area, and maybe what you learned from your son?
Yeah, well, you know better than me, but tennis is very challenging. You have to know how to play. You have to have the right technique, and you just cannot walk onto the court and just play tennis. You need tennis lessons. You need to learn it. Otherwise, it doesn't make fun if you cannot really control the ball. And there are other issues too on tennis too, because if you are alone on the tennis court and you're in puberty and you get hit twice 6-0, 6-0, you throw away your racket, because it's not a team sport. You are on yourself, and you don't have the self-confidence. And then there's this attraction of electronic games coming out. So what I can see is that a lot of youngsters, when they turn 13, 14, go away from tennis and go in other sports or electronic games. And that's a trend which we can stop, actually. And not only stop it, we can make tennis more accessible, because now you can learn the right technique in VR at home, easily. You don't have to go to the court, and you can chat with your friends when you play with them, and then you go onto the real court, and you're much better, and you enjoy it, and you're motivated. So times have changed.
I love that. And, I can tell you I have a niece and 2 nephews, and they don't play sports, but my nephews, I mean, they love the gaming side of it, and they do that a lot. So you're right, we see that all the time. I think our biggest competition is the digital world.
Yes, but if you have a tennis application, you no longer shoot other people or shoot aliens.
Mm,
Now you have a virtual sport, and I think that's the main thing. If we come into this topic, there have been a lot of tennis games out there where you use two fingers and, I don't know,
mhm,
the controllers and whatsoever, push
mhm.
buttons. This is not tennis. This is just a game called tennis.
Right.
But now that you have this new tech out there, that you can really play authentically, realistic with real ball physics, it's a totally different game, and it's actually no game anymore. It's a virtual sport.
Mm.
So I think that's the big change which came in now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's why the golf and the NASCAR analogies are more relatable than, say, like Wii tennis, because what golf and I think NASCAR did is actually mimic the actual environment so you could learn as you're playing.
Exactly. If you take these two examples, Golf Plus and NASCAR, what they have done is they became a simulator, not a game, a real
Right.
simulator. So they're simulating the sport, so that you go in, and it is as authentic as the real world. So you have two things: you have the learning effect, and you have the online matching effect, without traveling, without going somewhere, without spending time and money. And I think these are the key issues here. If you have that.
That's a good segue to my next question, actually, which is what do you see as maybe the barriers to tennis, our tennis industry adopting more of this type of esport, virtual reality type of technology as part of our existing ecosystem?
Yeah, I think the difference, to NASCAR is, which became so popular, or golf, is that you don't need a lot of hardware. You can use your computer you have, and off you go. Now with the VR tennis, you need to buy a headset, okay? And the cheapest headset is $399 from Oculus, from Meta, and there are other ones out there which are $500, $600. So you need the hardware. So that's one of the barriers. But the VR penetration is growing rapidly. It's like 100% market growth right now. So it's getting more and more popular, having the VR headsets. But the second thing is really the mindset, that you are open to this, that you say, okay, I really can play tennis at home. Is it possible? Are you kidding? Is this real? And I think people have to understand that this is now real, that you can play tennis from home. And that's going to take a while till everyone understands that.
Yeah, I think that is a real barrier. The mindset is, if I was a coach saying, okay, I've done your lesson or I've done your drills, now I want you to go home and I want you to put on your headset and I want you to do these games, this many hours so that these are the things I want you to work on. And I don't think our mindset is really there yet of how it could be a complement to learning the game, to more traditional styles of coaching and learning.
Well, actually, if I take the example of my son again, so his big weakness always was his backhand. He could not play backhand slice. It went always into the net. He always made the wrong motion. And we had really problems, getting that fixed. And he lost all the games just because of his stupid backhand.
Hmm.
Um, with our application, and in combination with the coach, he basically, trains every day, just 10, 15, 20 minutes. That's it. but the coach gets the statistics, and the coach sees, every
Mm-hmm.
stroke. How is the spin doing? How is the trajectory doing? Is he hitting the targets? How is he improving? So when he goes back to his coach, every 3 or 4 days, the coach sees on paper how well he's improving and where his weaknesses still are or his strengths are, so he can work on that. So he's basically having homework. It's like a
That's
homework.
awesome.
Yeah.
But fun homework.
It's a fun homework,
Sure,
yes,
yeah.
because he's not only training, he can, um, you know, we gamify the training too. So it's not only that you shoot the balls over the
Mm-hmm.
nets, but there's an arcade there. So every time you make a stroke, you see how many points you do. Depending
Yeah.
on what's the velocity, what's the spin, do you hit the
Mm-hmm.
targets, and you have a certain time frame where you have to hit the balls, and then the time goes down, and then the next level it's going to get faster, the ball comes faster, the target gets slower, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be more challenging, and it's a fun thing. So the training is totally different in VR than on the real court, where the motivator is more the coach and your surroundings. But in
Mm-hmm.
VR it's a total immersive situation, with a lot of gamification.
I love hearing how you were able to work with your son and combine the two and that the coach gets the information. I didn't even think about that, but that's brilliant because they can actually see improvement or see other areas to work on. That's awesome. Um,
Yes. Well, just to a
yeah.
last sentence on that. You know, if you're on the court, you don't know what is your speed of your stroke, what is your spin. You can see if you hit the target, and you can feel if it's a good stroke or not, or if it's fast enough. But to really quantify it and see statistics over time, how the velocity and spin and target hitting went, that's a total different story. It gives you much more feedback, and you can really improve your training much better.
Excellent. Um, what possibilities do you see? I mean, we just talked about a couple of them, obviously, how you can integrate it with the coaching experience. What other possibilities do you see for us to be able to integrate these types of experiences into our environment that we have now? And how would that maybe help us to attract more consumers, whether they're kids or adults?
Well, I see two ways. The one is, with VR tennis, you attract a completely new target audience. Okay, you get far more kids. For example, we have a cooperation with the Boy Scouts of America, and out of 100 kids, only one was playing tennis, and the
Hmm.
99, they're playing tennis the first time. So many of those are asking, oh, it's a fun game, I love it, where can I play? Is there a coach around? How do I do that? So you get a lot of people, a lot of kids getting into tennis, which you would have never gotten into because they never thought of going into
Right.
tennis. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that, um, with online tennis, you can play all your friends all over the world. If you have somebody in New York, somebody in Austria, we
Mhm.
could play a tiebreak now. If you have a headset, you put your headset on, and we play a 10-pointed tiebreak, a quick one. And during playing, we chat around and say, hey, your backhand is this and that.
Mhm.
It's really fun. So there's a social element there too, in doing that.
No, I think that's important. I mean, the social landscape has changed. You mentioned with kids these days, but I come from a generation, we grew up playing Atari and we sort of grew up with the video game piece. And so, my brother who's in his late 40s, I mean, our generation actually does connect to other people online. It does, I think it affects more than just kids. It's like that need for digital social interaction really runs across a lot of demographics. And how wonderful would that be to say, I don't have to go out and find some ladies that are free at the same time that I am to play. I can put my headset on and I can play with them anytime that I choose and get my practice in. And then maybe sometime we do meet up when we're in the same area. Wouldn't that be fun? Or I could play against people in other sections of the
Yeah.
USTA, which would be fun as well. So I love the social component to it and what you said about just expanding, introducing the sport to people who maybe haven't otherwise ever touched a racket or a ball.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really, the VR tennis really motivates you to go to the court, and utilize the learning of the moves and the technique you have done in VR. And it is not substituting real tennis at all. It's actually motivating you to go to the real court more often. That's the interesting part.
Yeah, that's great. So my last question is the most important question of today. So I'm sure we have people listening to this that will get excited and say, "Oh, this is great. I would like to reach out to Greg, and I would like to figure out how I can make this part of what I'm delivering or expand the reach." How can our audience get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more about this and maybe bring it to their area or just help partner with you to deliver more of these experiences to more people here in Florida?
Well, I do have exciting news because we will have a global tournament starting in November. Ooh. Where everyone can participate, and it's going to be up to $10,000 prize money to be won.
Okay.
So everyone is invited, and I do make a special offer to the USDA Florida. So whoever comes via USDA Florida gets free download, so he doesn't have to pay anything, no entry fees, nothing. But this is just exclusively for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. So if you're listening to this podcast, and we'll put it actually underneath the podcast when we post it, that please tell them you're from USDA Florida and you get the download for free. And hopefully our Florida people will try it out and be open. And yeah, we'll have you back on after the tournament so you can tell us how it went and see what else we can do to grow the game. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we close out today?
Well, I just can, give advice. Try VR tennis. Check it out, how it works and how you like it. I can promise you will have a wow effect.
Excellent. Well, I need a wow effect in my tennis game. I think the backhand is the only thing I have working for me, and ironically, but I so appreciate your time today, Greg, and I appreciate you reached out to me many months ago, and you've been doing some great things in this space, and anything that I can do to support and help you, I'm always happy to do. So thank you for your time today.
I thank you very much.
For those of you who are listening to the audio only version of this podcast, please be sure to check out USDA Florida's YouTube page, where you can see the full video version. And of course, for all episodes of the Here to Serve podcast, including upcoming topics and dates, visit USDAFlorida.com/here to serve. Thanks for tuning in and have a wonderful day.